I want to preface this and say that the reason why I'm making this video isn't in regards to what happened to Charlie Kirk from a few days ago. This is just to preface and say that that's kind of the reason as to why I'm talking about some of these anti-woke gaming grifters and some of the reactions that they had afterwards to some of the stuff that some people were saying online. So we're here to talk about a little bit of Endymion, a little bit of Smash GT, some anti-woke gaming grifters who said a lot of things about a lot of people afterwards when he had gotten assassinated. And I'm not going to go into what had happened. If you want to learn more about it, please do so in your own time, because that's not what the video is about. Just know that there is a video out there. I wouldn't recommend watching it because it's very graphic, but Charlie Kirk was assassinated, and a lot of people had a lot of very extreme reactions to this, and some people were celebrating his death, and a lot of them were very left-leaning on the political spectrum. And I'm not going to pretend like I agree with any of their behavior. I'm also not going to pretend like I thought that Charlie Kirk was a good guy or anything. I honestly thought that he was a terrible man who said a lot of very terrible things. He's not someone that I actively supported, but I'm not going to also say that I believe that he deserved to be killed, because that's not what I believe in. I don't believe that he should have been killed. That's not something that I want to say should have happened. I don't think that should have happened at all, because now his children now have to grow up without a father, and I truly believe that that's terrible. I don't believe that children should have to ever experience one of their parents getting killed, but I also don't think that they should have to grow up with only one of their parents, regardless of the fact that it's a man and a man together, a woman together, or a man and a woman together. It doesn't matter if they have two dads, two moms, or a mom and a dad. A lot of the anti-woke grifters in the gaming community had a lot of reactions, and it mostly had to do with some developers saying some stuff about Charlie Kirk being assassinated. And there was one developer by the name of Drew, I believe her name is, and she made a joke about Charlie, and that's what happened. She made a joke. I didn't think that the joke was very bad, but a lot of them had a very extreme reaction towards it. So they went after her, they went after Sucker Punch, and they were trying to essentially get her fired, which I think is ironic considering the fact that they constantly antagonize the left-leaning party for being antagonistic and trying to get people fired from their positions of power and cancel culture and all that stuff, when they're actively engaging the same behavior just for a different group of people. So ironic as is, that's what they were trying to do. And she had actually gotten fired. She no longer works at Sucker Punch because of her comments that were made, but Endymion had made a post and made a video and said some stuff about Ghost of Yotei and how he wasn't going to buy the game because of the fact that she had worked there. And this was before she had gotten fired. But they weren't going to buy the game. They were going to boycott. Smash JT wasn't going to buy the game. Grunz wasn't going to buy the game. Var Dark wasn't going to buy the game. Endymion wasn't going to either. It was so ridiculous. A lot of the things that these people were saying were just so ridiculous to me, because I truly didn't believe that the comment that was made, she made one sly little joke that, yeah, admittedly, probably shouldn't have been made, because this will fire back on the company, and I guess Sony and Sucker Punch felt the same way, which is why they fired her. If she wanted to say something about what happened with Charlie Kirk, she shouldn't have said so in a very public manner where people can access her tweets, access her posts on Blue Sky or whatever she posted it on. I agree that it probably shouldn't have been made, because I even said myself that I don't agree with a lot of the things that people are doing in regards to cheering for the death of Charlie Kirk. I don't agree with that. It's not something that I would personally want to do, but she is entitled to want to voice whatever she wants to say, and I don't think she should have been fired for a simple little joke that she made. I want to add, by the way, that ironically enough, Endymion says that Drew Harrison shouldn't have mentioned this whole thing revolving around Charlie Kirk, because she has no business talking about politics because she's a video game developer, which I think is really ironic, because Endymion, you're a guy who makes YouTube videos that talks about and complains about video games. What makes you so qualified to talk about the political spectrum of the world? I just thought that was ironic. So I got curious, and I was like, I haven't really seen any of Endymion's videos in regards to Ghost of Yotei. I've seen quite a few of Smash JT's, and I think they're truly awful. And then I started watching Endymion's videos, and some of the things that he was saying truly baffled me, because, yeah, I think his whole reasoning for wanting to boycott the game was really dumb. It was really ridiculous. It just didn't make any sense to me. But then I started watching some of his other videos in regards to Ghost of Yotei, and they are bewildering, to say the least. The reveal trailer comes out. It happened about almost a year ago to the date, and he started talking about it, and he was talking about how, oh, the game is woke trash, saying the usual rhetoric of it's woke trash, the main character looks like a guy, she's not attractive enough. And then they started mentioning like Jin, and then they started trying to bring this whole narrative of, oh, they forcefully changed the narrative of the game from it being about Jin, voice crack. They forcefully made the narrative of the game about Jin to now being this Atsu character. They're trying to get rid of the masculinity in gaming, and they're trying to do this, that, and the other, and blah, blah, blah. A lot of these insane rhetoric that just doesn't make any sense to me at all. Then I actually started listening to what he said, and then eventually later on in the video, because most of it is basically just a bunch of rhetoric that is just repeated on nonstop and etc. And he starts going into like how the fact that she's a political activist, which just doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, because whatever she does in her personal life doesn't matter as long as she does her job as an actor. That's all that really matters. But then he starts dissecting what the story seems to be about. And then he says this.
I feel like I'm going crazy here, dude, but this is what we have to deal with. To add more credence to my claims, Yotei takes place in 1608, which was around the time in the Edo period where the samurais were being made into the police peacekeeping force for Japan. So Atsu existing right when the police are basically being formed means that her story must have to in some way be connected to this concept. Maybe she rejects the idea of being a police officer for Japan, which I think could be the case actually. Because we see in the trailer that there's a bounty hunter guy saying that she is being hunted by all of these Ronins and such, so obviously there's a bounty on her head. But if Atsu refuses to obey the shogunate and doesn't want to be a police officer or a samurai, but also uses said weapons of the police at the time with their training to enact her own justice, then she's what, a vigilante? What are we doing here? Look, I'm all for a story where a rogue samurai denies the samurai code. I mean, Tsushima kind of did the same thing already. But can we also address the fact that the person they got for the role also hates the police and is an activist?
So yeah, based off of very little information from just the first trailer that was released, he makes a lot of very weird assumptions about what the story is going to be just because of the time frame of the story and when it takes place, which is in the early 1600s, I believe around 1603 to 1608, and that was when the establishment of the samurai being police officers essentially was established. It was established during the Edo period. This is something that is very much known. You can research this on your own, but for some weird reason, I'm not sure where he gets this from. Maybe it's just because he thinks that it's carrying over from when Jin was the main character in the previous game and he was like actively a samurai, but he calls Atsu a samurai, but that's not what she is. That's not what they ever refer to her as. He just sees her holding a sword and then just immediately assumes, oh, she's a samurai, when that's not the case. So she's not a samurai because she's not a part of some samurai clan or some samurai family. She's not invited as an adopted child of like a daimyo to become a samurai in any way. She's not a shinobi, she's not a kunoichi, she's not any of these things. They refer to her as an onryo, and she's essentially a vengeful spirit because in the lore of the game, from what they have described, she watched the murder of her family from the Yotei 6 and she didn't die. She, metaphorically speaking, rose from the dead and is now a vengeful spirit trying to get revenge on the people who murdered her family. That's what the story is about. That's what she is. She is an onryo. She is a vengeful spirit. But for some reason, Endymion insists to call her a samurai. I don't know why. This was 11 months ago. Maybe he doesn't feel that way anymore. I'll give him the little bit of a benefit of the doubt, but I believe that he probably still feels this way. The fact that he just was so insistent when trying to push this narrative was just so weird. And his first reaction to this is that, oh, of course it stars the sequel to Ghost of Tsushima. Of course it stars a Japanese woman samurai warrior, and they couldn't help themselves from trying to get rid of masculinity, get rid of a franchise that was built on masculinity and replace it with a woman. And it's like, what do you mean built on masculinity? This wasn't even a franchise yet. We didn't even know if we were going to get a sequel to Ghost of Tsushima yet. But he insists on trying to say that this was a franchise built on masculinity when it's very obvious that the whole point of what they're trying to do with Ghost of Yotei, because he also loves to say that this is supposed to be like a spin-off game with the next video that he posted very shortly after, like the next month on October 2nd, which ironically, a year from then, which is next month, is when the game actually comes out.
I was also told do not expect Yotei in 2025 at all. Apparently the game's nowhere near being done. But it's a very slim chance at best that this game actually releases in 2025. It could very easily fall into 2026, But if you're getting your hopes up for it coming out next year, probably don't do that. Every source that I spoke to say that they fully expect a delay at some point to be announced.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
As I was also told further, Ghost of Tsushima 2 was described as Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, but way better in every single way. Yotei is also allegedly being developed as a cross-gen game for PS5 and PS4, because Sucker Punch and Sony are worried that the game won't sell as well if it isn't available to a larger install base.
What the hell are you talking about? Who are you talking to?
And he tries to refer to us as like a spin-off game that had a different story written out that was supposed to be following along Shin Sakai, but he got erased from the story for some reason. And then he starts reading off from this insider, supposedly insider source, which basically sums up to this.
Nice argument, Senator. Why don't you back it up with a source?
My source is that I made it the fuck up.
Starts to try to explain what the story was beforehand, and still involved Jin, and he was still trying to fight like the Mongol army, but then they're trying to make it like Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, and he's trying to like create like a clan of ghost members to carry on the legacy, and just it very much reads as if he put a prompt in ChatGPT and he said, write me a script and a story about a Ghost of Tsushima 2. And then ChatGPT gave him this story, and then he started try to spin this as, yeah, this was an insider source where he explains that this was an early draft of what the story of a sequel to Ghost of Tsushima was supposed to be. One of the main reasons why I feel so strongly that this is what he actually did instead of actually having an insider source is because if you're watching the video, he's talking also about Assassin's Creed Shadows and what the original story for that game was supposed to be. But then you're paying attention, if you know anything about Assassin's Creed, you start to find holes in the story and this insider source that he was coming up with. And given the benefit of the doubt, maybe it's true, maybe it isn't. I have no idea because I can't verify it because he doesn't actually provide any actual sources or evidence to support that. But as he's explaining this alleged first draft of this Assassin's Creed Shadows story, he's talking about the characters trying to find the Sword of Eden, or that the Sword of Eden is involved in some sort of way. But if you know anything about Assassin's Creed, you already know that they had already used the Sword of Eden in a previous story, in Assassin's Creed Unity. Assassin's Creed Unity is where we see the Sword of Eden for the first time. So how did it get from all the way to feudal Japan to all the way to the French Revolution in France? Like that doesn't make any sense. So either one of two things happened. Either one, he made it the fuck up, or two, he was given this source and it's legitimate, and the reason why they didn't go with this story is because they realized that they had already basically used this story before with the Sword of Eden. So they just didn't want to reuse the same plot point, the same storyline. And this is just my own personal opinion. This is all conjecture, but this is my personal opinion. I believe that he's lying and that he just came up with this in ChatGPT. That's just me, though. I have nothing to prove that that's actually the case. Feel free to disagree with me or not. He also loves to try to spin this narrative that Sony Japan and like the executives over at Sony didn't know that this was what the story was going to be about, when that is literally impossible because they're the ones who are supposed to be approving that this is supposed to be the case in the first place. Because why would they not tell them what the game is supposed to be? That just seems weird. Why would they do that? Why would they do that to the studio that fucking owns them? Very bizarre. The videos are just not very well made. It's just a bunch of yapping about basically nothing and just spreading misinformation for the sake of spreading misinformation and trying to make the game seem a lot worse for his audience that already doesn't like this game anyways, for a multitude of reasons that he's already tried to list out to begin with. And it's insane to me. The behavior, the rhetoric, the language that he uses, it's just, none of it makes any sense to me at all. And the fact that people tried to buying into this, they tried to believe that this is what the game was supposed to be, and that this is what's going on with the game. This is what the devs are doing. The devs are evil. They're infected with the DEI curse, and Sweet Baby Inc. is involved because writers from a different studio that had Sweet Baby Inc. involved, they're now working on this game. It's a whole thing that just doesn't make any actual logical fucking sense. And then he starts talking about in a different video, he tries to continue further this narrative that Ghost of Yotei was supposed to be a Ghost of Tsushima 2, and then shows LinkedIn profiles of developers who were hired around the time frame with the information that he was given the information. He shows like a bunch of employees that were hired around the time frame when they had shifted the story from it being about Jin to it being about Atsu. And it's all circumstantial and it's so hypothetical. It just doesn't seem like it really corroborates what the information that he was told. Most likely he wasn't told this information at all, and he's just lying about it to his audience, because that's what these grifters do. They try to spin information into something that it isn't, or they just straight up lie to you to get views and clicks, because that's what all this is for. They're just trying to make a grift to make as much money as possible. They're lying to you. That's what he does. It's just lying to his audience. He lies to people on a daily basis all the time. With every video that he uploads, he is just lying to his audience to try to spin a narrative that doesn't exist. And I don't understand how this guy has so many viewers and so many subscribers. I don't understand how people can watch this garbage and just agree with it and just blindly believe everything that he says. It's astounding. It really is astounding. So I really just wanted to get my thoughts and opinions really quick about this whole thing with Ghost of Yotei, because I did it before, so I felt like doing it again. But it really just was because it spun off of this whole media frenzy in regards to this conservative political content creator guy on the internet with Charlie Kirk, and just the way it spun off from it being about one thing to it being about another thing. And then you see these right-wing guys trying to use Charlie Kirk's name and quote-unquote legacy to justify their behavior, which is just the same thing that they constantly yell that the left wing is constantly doing all the time, which is hilarious. But yeah, that's really all I wanted to say. I just found Endymion's videos to be strikingly bizarre from anything that I've seen before, because it's just narratives that have no evidence, and any evidence that exists is entirely conjecture for all we know, and then just lies. It's just lies. The whole channel is just built on lies. It's the same thing for Vara Dark. It's the same thing for Smash JT. If you go to Grum's Twitter, he's just constantly lying about everything that he's talking about. He doesn't actually care. None of these creators actually care about gaming. They're just trying to make a buck. That's all they care about. They're just trying to use you and manipulate you to get as much money as possible. They're trying to get you to, go and check out a lot of their other stuff, to go check out their Patreon, to go and follow them on Twitch, and then gift, Twitch subs, and go follow them on Twitter, because a lot of them have the blue check mark, so they're paying for premium and they're trying to make money off of their posts as well. They're just trying to make money. Most of them probably don't even really believe anything that they say. They just love trolling the fuck out of everybody. But I think this is one of these instances where Endymion truly believes what he's saying, and that he's actually being truthful with what he's saying about the whole Charlie Kirk thing. Just anyway, I don't want to ramble on any longer. I don't want to talk about this anymore. Endymion is a piece of shit, and he's really annoying, and just everyone, all these people, this huge circle jerk at the end, it's been non-stop for so long, and I wish that it would just go away, and that these people would just fade into obscurity. For the most part, they have, but that's pretty much it for me, though. I don't really have much else to say. If you liked the video, be sure to leave a like, and if you want to see more, please be sure to subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next one. I'm out. Peace.